A man named William had to face many obstacles for a good part of his early life. When he was a baby of only 11 months old, he was found in an alley by an employee of a well-known orphanage in the city of Albany, New York, and there was no sign of his mother or anyone who could have left him there. After that day, Will's fate was sealed, but no one could imagine what would happen to him. It was unclear who the baby's mother or father was when Jane found him next to a trash can and took him to the orphanage. It was raining that day, and the young woman wondered how anyone could abandon him under those circumstances. But she soon put that thought aside and preferred, at that moment, to just take care of the baby with the help of other employees of the institution. On that same day, Jane and her companions decided to name him William. After some tests, they discovered that the little boy was malnourished, but he was strong. He cried just a little and was almost 1 year old. More precisely, when Jane found him, he was 11 months old. Babies are supposed to be easier to adopt than older children, but despite that fact, it wasn't the case with Will. As time passed, Will grew up and made many friends there. When he turned 4 and became more aware of himself and the world around him, he noticed that all the children who got close to him would leave at some point. It didn't matter their age. If they were older or younger than Will, eventually they would say goodbye to the boy who always stood at the door of the orphanage waving while they left. One day, when Will was already 10 years old, a lady was hired to be the new cook. She was a nice woman with a sweet smile, and her name was Aubrey. She cooked at the orphanage on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and worked at a fancy buffet in town on the weekends, which had been her usual job for quite some time. As soon as she arrived, Aubrey was warmly welcomed by the staff, and all the children adored the talented cook. Aubrey didn't make any sweet treats at the orphanage. Her job was to make only savory dishes during the day, but at the buffet parties, she and the other cooks were in charge of cooking all kinds of meals, including desserts. The lady was jovial, despite being nearly 60 years old, and she was full of adorable surprises. One of them was the fact that she played the accordion masterfully, and she was not only talented, she was also very smart. At the buffet's sophisticated parties, she would take her empty accordion case and fill it with chocolate cake and various candy to take to the children at the shelter. No wonder the children liked Aubrey so much, and Will was delighted with her. He noticed how happy and communicative she was with everyone, and she always brought in the accordion box delicious things that the children would never have tasted. Another year passed, and the children came and went, but Will still remained. There were times when he was the only oldest child in the place, and he didn't have any friends to play with, because there were only little babies. But on those occasions, the boy freely enjoyed all the sweets that Aubrey brought, in addition to the lady's company, which made those days happier. That way, despite Will remaining at the orphanage, Aubrey and the boy created a greater bond, a true friendship. On Will's 12th birthday, he made a special request to the sweet cook. "If you bring a piece of cake, can you put a matchstick in it so we can sing happy birthday to me?" Aubrey smiled at the innocent request. Birthdays at the orphanage were celebrated all together and organized monthly. So, for the first time, Will would have the chance to have a party just for himself. On the day of his birthday, Aubrey took the piece of cake and put a matchstick in it, as the boy had asked. The lady sang happy birthday and saw his eyes shine with emotion. She hugged him, wished him nice things, and they talked until sleep came. Later, the rest of the children were already asleep, but Will heard Aubrey crying softly in her room. He got upset, thinking it might be because of his birthday request. However, William didn't know it at the time, But Aubrey was crying with emotion because she had decided, in that instant, that she was going to adopt him. She already felt that in her heart. She already considered him as her son, but on his 12th birthday, she was sure that she needed to make that more real. Therefore, the woman began to think about what she needed to do to make everything go the right way, as she was apprehensive about never having had children or a husband and knew that she could have legal obstacles along the way. Aubrey decided to speak with one of the caretakers at the orphanage about her concerns before taking the official request to the board. She ended up talking to Jane, the employee who found Will when he was a baby. The girl was moved by the story and explained everything to the lady, in addition to helping to forward the adoption request to a great judge who facilitated the whole process. Meanwhile, the other caretakers probed Will to see if he liked the idea of being adopted at that moment, without saying that it was Aubrey's desire. The cook's biggest fear was receiving a no at the end of the process and not being able to adopt the boy, which would frustrate him a lot. The boy had already suffered all this time watching other children receive visits and eventually be adopted. For some reason, none of the people who arrived at the shelter wanting to adopt were interested in getting to know Will better, and on the days that he was sad, Aubrey always used the same phrase to try to make him feel better. "Don't worry, dear. Tomorrow, you will be lucky." That phrase became a fondness for Will on the cloudiest days. The process to be approved for adoption took 10 months, but it finally happened. And as planned, everything was done very discreetly so that the boy would not get suspicious before the right time. Aubrey couldn't contain her joy, and to break the news to Will, she decided to do something different and organized a party just for him with the help of the caretakers. On the day before the party, the boy was sad because a little boy he had become attached to had been officially adopted. And Aubrey went up to him and patted him on the back, saying, "Don't worry, Will. Tomorrow, you'll be lucky." Little did he imagine that the next day he would go home with her. At that stage, Aubrey didn't have to steal the sweets from any party. Her cook friends who worked with her knew about the adoption and got together to organize a real celebration with delicious sweets and snacks. To top it all off, they made a wonderful cake for the boy, and behind the table there was a big sign on which was written William, and just below, in bigger letters, Lucky. When he saw all that decoration and the sign with his name, they told Will that he had been adopted. The boy was a little confused and asked, "Who adopted me? Nobody came to see me. Nobody came to talk to me." He looked around looking for who it could be and saw Miss Aubrey at the door of the room with all of his things and Will's suitcase ready to go home. At that moment, he knew that Aubrey had adopted him. There wasn't a single person in the room who wasn't moved by that scene. William ran towards Aubrey and they embraced, crying of relief and genuine happiness. After the celebration, they walked to their house that was close to the shelter, and Will was very happy. He had never gone far from the orphanage, so he was fascinated by everything he saw on the street. When they got home, Aubrey had prepared more delightful surprises. There was a bedroom just for the boy with everything neat and tidy, and a bed with his favorite basketball team quilt on it. Will was happier than he could have imagined, and so he began to live with his mother, Miss Aubrey. And just as Will tried to be a good son, Aubrey tried to be the best mother for him, spoiling him with balance and being more strict when needed so that he would study and become a better person every day. The boy grew up to become a great man, and every important or grand event that happened, his mother wrote "Lucky" on a piece of paper and handed it to him to remind him that that day he was lucky. Will kept all the notes on which Miss Aubrey wrote. She could use any paper around, but she would never stop wishing that her son would be lucky. With all the encouragement and love from his mother, Will got a scholarship to a good university. On the day he found out, his mother, as usual, handed him a note written "Lucky," and he handed her an old notebook with yellowed pages, and on each line was written the word "lucky," with the first date being the day when he was adopted, because for him, since that day, all the others have been lucky days. Miss Aubrey wept once more with the love of her son. That gesture was the most beautiful she had ever received from anyone. William finished college with merit, and along the way, he met a very nice girl who he married after a while. On his wedding day, Aubrey hid a lucky note in his jacket, and the couple had a daughter a few years later. On the day of her granddaughter's birth, Aubrey was already older and naturally weakened by age, but this time she managed to hide 2 lucky notes, one in her son's coat and another in her granddaughter's blanket. Miss Aubrey raised William very well and got to see some of her granddaughter's growth. Unfortunately, 3 years ago, Aubrey got sick and had to be hospitalized, and in her last moments, she asked the nurse, "Can you call my son? I want to enjoy his company while I'm lucid. I feel like I don't have much time." William stayed a little longer with his mother, who didn't have much strength and was unable to write, but with the help of the nurse, she managed to write a note and said to him, "Son, your mother loves you very much. I have to go. I just want you to know that no matter what happens, tomorrow you will be lucky." At that moment, Will felt that his mother was struggling not to leave in his presence. "Son, I think I'm in the mood for that little coffee downstairs. Can you get it for me?" said Aubrey in a weak voice. Will knew she couldn't have that coffee, but he went down to get it, and when he was paying the attendant, the nurse located him, and then he knew that his mother had just passed away. William was really loved for a long time. He was the one who told this story for us, and this is a tribute to his mother, Aubrey, who left only inspiring memories of love and affection, without letting us forget that tomorrow could be a lucky day. If you know any similar stories, write about it in the comments, like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more fantastic stories.